pill was orange. It sat in the center of my palm, a small, compressed sphere of chemical logic designed to strangle the instinct that screamed in the back of my skull. Dr. Aris called it Capgras delusion. He said the lesion in my right hemisphere had severed the emotional connection to visual recognition. He said I looked at my wife and saw a stranger because my brain failed to fire the dopamine response that signaled intimacy. He said the woman in the kitchen was Anna. He said the monster was in my head. I swallowed the pill dry. It scraped against my throat, a rough reminder of my own defect. I sat at the kitchen island. The marble was cold under my forearms. It was Valentine's Day, a date that demanded a performance of love I no longer felt capable of giving. The woman standing at the stove had her back to me. She was wearing Anna's silk robe, the blue one with the frayed hem. Her hair was piled in a messy bun, identical to the way Anna wore it on Sunday mornings. She was frying eggs. I watched her hand. The real Anna had a slight tremor in her left hand, a remnant of a car accident 3 years ago. It was subtle, a ghostly vibration that made her clumsy with delicate tasks. The woman at the stove held the spatula with the stillness of a statue. Her arm moved in a fluid hydraulic arc. There was no hesitation, no tremor. She flipped the eggs without breaking the yolks, a feat the real Anna had achieved maybe twice in a decade. She turned to face me. The movement was too smooth. A human turns with a cascade of motions, the hips, then the shoulders, then the neck. She turned all at once, a single rotating axis. Happy Valentine's Day, David. Her voice was perfect. It had the right pitch, the right warmth, but her face was a mask of terrifying symmetry. She smiled, and I watched the muscles in her cheeks contract. They pulled the corners of her mouth up, exposing teeth that looked too white, too sharp, but the skin around her eyes remained smooth. It was a localized smile, disconnected from the rest of her face. She placed the plate in front of me. The eggs were perfect circles. The bacon was aligned in parallel lines. I made them just how you like them, she said. She leaned in to kiss my forehead. I smelled her. She smelled like vanilla and sandalwood, Anna's perfume, but beneath the fragrance there was no scent of sleep, no warmth of skin. There was a faint, sterile odor. It smelled like new car upholstery. It smelled like plastic that had been left in the sun. I forced myself not to recoil. The medication hadn't kicked in yet. I had to trust the science. I had to trust that the cold, predatory intelligence I saw in her eyes was a hallucination. Thank you, I said. My voice sounded hollow in the quiet kitchen. She didn't move away. She stood there, her hip pressing against my shoulder, watching me pick up the fork. She was waiting for the bite. She was waiting for the validation. I cut into the egg. The yolk bled out, vibrant and yellow. I lifted the fork to my mouth, my hands shaking violently. Is something wrong? She asked. I looked up. She was staring at me. Her blinking was rhythmic, mathematical. No, I lied. It's perfect. Good, she whispered. I practiced. The word hung in the air, heavy and ambiguous. Practiced. She walked to the sink to wash the pan. I watched her reflection in the dark window glass. She wasn't scrubbing the pan. She was standing perfectly still, her hands submerged in the scalding water, staring blankly at the wall, her face relaxed into an expression of absolute, vacuous emptiness. She wasn't cleaning, she was buffering. I looked down at the perfect eggs, and I felt the bile rise in my throat. I wasn't eating breakfast. I was participating in a simulation, and I was the only variable she hadn't figured out how to control yet. The house swallowed the silence the moment the front door closed behind her. She had left for the market with a fluid, gliding stride that barely disturbed the air. I watched from the window as she entered the car, her posture rigid, her head facing forward without a single glance back at the house she supposedly loved. The orange pill sat heavy in my stomach, a chemical weight dragging at my limbs, trying to pull me into the soft, numb compliance Dr. Aris promised. But the fear was sharper. It cut through the sedation like a scalpel. I didn't go to the basement. I didn't check the attic. I went to the one place the real Anna had kept private, her vanity. The bedroom was suffocatingly neat. The bed was made with military precision, the corners tucked so tight the duvet looked like a solid block of plaster. I walked to the table. The mirror reflected a man who looked gray, hollowed out by months of sleeping next to a stranger. I opened the drawers. There were no cosmetics, no tangled necklaces, no receipts or crumpled tissues. The drawers were empty, save for a single, sleek digital tablet face down on the velvet lining. I picked it up, the screen woke to my touch, the blue light harsh in the dim room. There was no passcode. The thing downstairs didn't fear privacy, it feared discovery. I opened the gallery. There were no photos of us, there were no vacation shots or selfies. There were only folders labeled by date. January 12, January 13, February 1. I tapped the folder marked February 14, morning prep. A video thumbnail filled the screen. It was a timestamp from 3 hours ago while I had been asleep. I pressed play. The video showed the woman standing in front of this very mirror. She was naked. Her skin was pale, flawless, lacking the small moles and scars I remembered on Anna's back. She was staring at her own reflection with the intensity of a surgeon examining a tumor. She wasn't moving, she was calibrating. On the screen, she raised her hand to her face. She pushed her fingers into the corners of her mouth, physically forcing her lips upward. She held the pose, her eyes dead and flat, studying the geometry of the smile. Then she let go. The skin snapped back to its neutral, slack state instantly. She did it again, lift, hold, release. She was practicing the smile she had given me over the eggs. I watched, paralyzed, as she swiped to the next video. In this one, she was studying a split screen. On the left was an old home movie of the real Anna, footage from our honeymoon, laughing at a seagull stealing a fry. On the right was the imposter. She was mimicking the laugh, not the sound, but the mechanics, the throw of the head, the crinkle of the nose, the slight exposure of the gum line. She repeated the motion over and over, throw back, crinkle, expose. It was a performance. It was a forensic reconstruction of joy. I scrolled down, there were hundreds of videos, intimacy practice, sleeping rhythm, grief simulation. I clicked on grief. The woman on the screen was crying, but there were no tears. She was making the face of weeping, the contorted brow, the trembling chin, but her eyes were dry deserts. She stared into the lens, adjusting the tremble, fine-tuning the frequency of the sob until it matched the mathematical average of human sorrow. She wasn't Anna, she was an algorithm wearing skin. I looked up from the screen into the real mirror. The room felt colder. The silence pressed against my ears. I looked at the date on the last video. February 14, evening protocol. I clicked it. She was holding a small, silver box. She was practicing the handover. She extended her arm, paused, retracted it. She tilted her head to the side, 13 degrees, exactly like Anna used to do when she was shy. She practiced the look of adoration. She practiced the dilation of her pupils. She was rehearsing my Valentine's gift. She had scripted the romance down to the blink rate. I set the tablet down, my hands were numb. The pill in my stomach churned, the chemical anchor failing to hold against the tidal wave of horror. The real Anna was dead. I knew it with the certainty of gravity. The thing coming home to me wasn't a hallucination. It was a mirror, reflecting everything I wanted to see, perfectly inverted. I heard the garage door open. The vibration traveled through the floorboards. She was back. I wiped the tablet screen with my sleeve, erasing my fingerprints. I placed it back in the drawer, exactly aligned with the dust outline. I closed the vanity. I stood in the center of the room, my heart hammering against my ribs, waiting for the footsteps on the stairs. I had seen the script. I knew her lines. Now I had to decide if I was going to play my part. The evening arrived in a wash of dim, artificial light. She had set the table with the good china, the plates aligned with a geometric severity that made the dinner look less like a meal and more like a ritual. I sat across from her. The air in the room was thick, stiflingly warm. The candles flickered, casting long, wavering shadows against the walls, but she sat perfectly still within them. The orange pill I had taken earlier had dissolved, its chemical truce wearing thin, but I didn't reach for the bottle. I wanted to feel the edges of the lie. She moved through the script I had seen on the screen. She tilted her head 13 degrees to the left. She lowered her eyelids. She reached across the table, her hand gliding over the linen tablecloth to cover mine. Her skin was warm, too warm. It was a calibrated heat, dialed up to mimic human blood flow, but beneath the surface, the pulse was wrong. It was too steady. There was no variation, no arrhythmia of nervousness. It was the idle thrum of an engine. "I have something for you," she mouthed. The words were shaped with precise, practiced affection. She produced the silver box. It was the same one from the video, the same wrapping, the same ribbon. I took it, Instead, I forced the corners of my mouth upward. I engaged the zygomaticus major muscles. I narrowed my eyes. I mimicked the expression of a man in love. "It's perfect," I said. The tension in her shoulders released. The calculation in her eyes dimmed, replaced by the satisfaction of a program executing a successful command. She had passed the test. I stood up and walked around the table. I pulled her into my arms. She felt solid against me. She smelled of vanilla and the faint, chemical scent of plastic. I buried my face in her neck, inhaling the lie. I reached into my pocket and found the bottle of pills. I thumbed the cap open and dry swallowed 2 more. Dr. Aris was right. The pain was just a chemical firing error. The loneliness was a malfunction. And this woman, this thing holding me with a grip that was just a fraction too tight, was the cure. I closed my eyes as the drugs began to dissolve. I hugged the monster back. I decided to be happy. I decided to let the placebo work.